Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am the Doom Cannon, and today you're going to be watching my personal favorite footage of all the betas that I've been involved with, and it's a quest chain with the Dredge, and it's quite interesting and it's really fun, so enjoy. I'd like to start off this episode by giving a shout out to my best commenter, 0T13, and per request, I will be talking about different ways to build your Necromancer. Now, the first thing to note about Necromancers, which is quite awesome, the Necro, along with the Warrior, has the highest base health of all the professions. At level 80, your base health is 9,212. Now, the Engineer, Ranger, and Mesmer get 5,922, and the Guardian, Thief, and Elementalist get 1,645. So you have a significantly greater health pool than the other professions. So that's something to think about when you're rolling a Necromancer. And so, if I have time at the end of this video, I'll go into traits and attributes, but they're quite a complicated topic, so I might leave that for some other time. Alright, so, from what I see, there's about 3, maybe 4 different ways that you can build your Necromancer. And each one of those with variations, of course. The first one, and probably most used and the favorite of most people, is the Minion Master. Woohoo! So, as a Minion Master, I would take Summon Blood Fiend as your heal, summon Bone Minions, summon Shadow Fiend, and summon Bone Fiend or summon Fleshworm, as well as either Lich Form, Hounds of Balthazar, or Flesh Golem. Now you might be wondering, why would you pick Lich Form in a Minion Master build? Now it's because there is a Summon Jagged Horror skill in the Lich Form skill bar, and this summons 5 more minions. So with the Lich Form, you have 11 pet minions that you can control at once. With Hounds of Balthazar, which are significantly more powerful than the Jagged Horrors, might I add, would give you 9 minions to control, and the Flesh Golem Ultimate will give you 8 or 7. Yeah, I think 7. So yeah, anyway, the whole point of a Minion Master is to be able to dish out a ton of damage without really putting yourself in the fight, per se. You're supposed to really be able to sit back and basically play a more supporty role. So, in light of this, I would suggest taking a staff as your primary weapon choice. If you're going to be a Minion Master, because you're not going to be in the middle of the fight very often, unless of course you want to fight alongside your minions, and in which case you might want to take an axe, or daggers, or something else. But the staff for sure you want on your 2 weapons, in one of your 2 weapon slots. Now, the second Necro build that I'd like to touch on is what I would just call a DPS Necro, or just a raw damage Necro. For this one, I would suggest taking a axe with a horn or a dagger in your offhand. And that's just because the axe deals tons and tons of damage, more than the dagger, and it has more range than the dagger. So it applies vulnerability, so you'll just do more damage with the more attacks you get in. And the horn has the movement speed boost as well as a confusion condition. So that's really good if you're going to be running in the middle of things. And the movement speed boost also does damage to enemies around you. So that's another added source of damage. Now, as for skills, I would suggest taking Well of Blood, because it gives you health over time instead of one large chunk of health. And if you're going to be in the middle of a fight, you're going to want to have health over time and not take a bunch of damage and then have to heal up and then take a bunch more damage and you have to run away and heal up later when your healing still comes off cooldown. With Well of Blood, your healing should keep you at about the same health as while you're fighting. It might not increase your health, but you'll be able to mitigate the damage coming in with healing. So, that's the healing skill. For your 3 utility skills, I would suggest taking Poison Cloud, Well of Blood, or Signet of Spite, and Spectral Armor. Signet of Spite increases your raw power, so it increases your basic attacks, which is significant with the axe already, and another increase is tons of damage. Spectral Armor gives you extra survivability, gives you the boon that mitigates more damage, and so that's always a good thing if you're going to be in the thick of things. And Poison Cloud is kind of, I mean, you could pick something else there, but I think I liked it. And what it does is it allows you apply a condition on yourself, and the target area, it gets filled with a poison that inflicts vulnerability and poison on any foe that goes into it. So I think that's quite useful. It's a great damage over time spell. So yeah. And the last and probably my favorite setup that I'm going to talk about is the support Necro, which I think is going to be the best PvP Necro, honestly. Or at least for organized PvP with people you know and who know how to play with the Necro. So the whole idea of a support Necro is to apply conditions or remove them, and you're supposed to move the conditions around all over the place, and that's your job. Now, because of this, I would suggest using the Scepter and Focus combination. Just because of the extra added conditions that they can use, or that they inflict. Now, for your healing skill, I'm going to suggest you take Consume Conditions. Now, you might be wondering why, but give it a minute. You'll hear why in just a second. So, your utility skills are going to... I would choose the utility skills to be Epidemic, Plague Signet, and either Spectral Walk, Well of Power, or Well of Corruption, depending on the situation. Now, as you remember, I said use Consume Conditions in your healing skill. Now, why would you want to use this? It's because it gives you health for every single condition on you. Now, the passive for Plague Signet transfers all conditions from your allies to you, making you an amazing supporter. And if you're able to do that, and you pop your Consume Conditions, you'll get a ton of health back for just having that passive up. Or, if you want, after you amass a number of conditions on yourself, you can use the active of Plague Signet and send all of your conditions to whatever target foe you want. And once they're there, you can hit them with Epidemic and apply vulnerability to yourself, and then spread all the conditions on that foe to all surrounding foes. So it's quite powerful. It's a very powerful combination. As for your last utility skill, I would prefer Spectral Walk, but that's just my gameplay style. It drops you into a semi-invisible stage where they can see where you're going, but they can't really see you, and so they can follow you. When Spectral Walk ends, if you don't end it early, you teleported back to your original position. So it makes it great if you're running away from someone and you know you're going to die if you just keep running. So you can use that to basically trick them into following you, and you maybe jump down off of a building or something like that. And then once it ends, you'll go right back up to where you started the skill. Now, if you're going for a pure support role, then you're going to want to, without really an escape ability or anything like that, you're going to be using either Well of Power or Well of Corruption. Now, Well of Power, it transforms all conditions on your allies, on any ally in the well, to a boon, which I think is awesome. I used it in PvE a lot. It's the number 9 skill on my skill bar right now in the game, in the footage you're seeing. And the other skill that you could use is Well of Corruption, and this transfers all boons on your enemies to conditions. It's basically the opposite of what it does for what Well of Power does for your allies. And could also be pretty useful, but it's really situational, and if there's not really that many enemies around you, it's not really going to be worth much. So I would be wary about taking that skill. It is powerful, but not quite as good as, let's say, like Well of Power, which I think is one of the best utility skills out there. As for your ultimate, for DPS and support, you could take Lich Form, but actually Lich Form is probably the only one you want to take for DPS. But for a support Necro, you might want to consider taking Plague, and that's because it applies conditions to any foe you come in contact with, which combines on top of all the other conditions that you can output. And the skills with Plague are pretty good, so it's quite a powerful ultimate, but it's really a PvP ultimate, and it won't be very good in PvE unless you're going against a giant mob, which sometimes happens. So that's that. Well, I guess I have a little bit more time. I'm gonna go brief. There's about 7 more minutes of footage, so I'm gonna go briefly into the traits and attributes. So I'm going to go to attributes first. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You got 10 attributes. So you've got power, which increases your attack, precision, which increases your critical chance, toughness increases armor, vitality increases health, prowess increases critical damage, malice increases condition damage, expertise increases condition duration, concentration increases boon duration, compassion increases outgoing heals, including self-heals, and the Necro-specific attribute is called Hunger, which increases your life force pool and allows you to go into Death Shroud for a longer extended period of time. So you can kind of see for yourself how that fits in with the Necromancer. So the traits are as follows. Spite increases power and expertise, Curses increases precision and malice, Death Magic increases toughness and concentration, Blood Magic increases vitality and compassion, Soul Reaping increases prowess and hunger. So that's all the different things that you can put your points into. So traits, as they apply to the 3 different builds that I gave you earlier, you're going to want to take, if you're going to go for the Minion Master, you're going to be in the back, you're not really going to be taking too much damage. So I would suggest taking Soul Reaping, Blood Magic, and Death Magic as your traits that you spend your points in, at least until level 30. You can do whatever you want with them after. I haven't gotten that far, so good luck. And the reasons are as follows. Death Magic increases your armor and your boon durations. So while you don't really have that many boons to give yourself or allies as a Minion Master, the extra armor is quite important, especially if you don't plan on taking a bunch of damage. You don't have really any skills to mitigate that damage, so you want to be able to at least absorb a little bit of damage before you can get away. And same applies for Blood Magic. The plus 10 vitality will give you extra health to absorb damage with, and the compassion will increase the heal that your Blood Fiend gives you. So you'll be tankier, not a tank per se, but you will be tankier, and it will allow you to absorb damage and let your minions do all the damage for you, while using your first 5 skills to either get away or do damage yourself. So for the DPS Necro, I would suggest taking Spite, Curses, and Soul Reaping. First thing you want to max out is definitely going to be Spite. That gives you the extra power, it gives you the expertise for condition duration, so you can kite for longer. It'll increase that cripple or whatever other conditions you want to inflict on them. So it's quite powerful to use. Curses will increase your critical chance as well as your condition damage, so it combines really well with Spite. And same with Soul Reaping. With Soul Reaping, the prowess goes up, so your critical damage goes up. So if you combine all three of those, you're going to be golden, because you're going to have extra critical chance, you're going to have extra critical damage, you're going to have extra damage output on top of that, so you're just going to be dishing out tons and tons of damage. And lastly, the more supporting Necro. So again, Soul Reaping, I don't see why you wouldn't want to use Soul Reaping. Obviously you're not going to max it out first, but it's definitely something good to have. As a supporter, I would suggest taking Curses and either Death Magic or Blood Magic, depending on what you want to support as. Personally, I would suggest taking Death Magic over Blood Magic. While Blood Magic does give you extra health and extra healing, Death Magic increases your armor, which will mitigate damage, like the big spike damage that some characters can dish out, and it gives you extra boon duration. So all those boons that conditions that you transfer into boons or whatever else you want to do will all be extended for your entire party. So that's the great skill to use. If you're interested in increasing your conditions, by all means, you can take the Curses trait. It's quite good. That's the one I would suggest maxing out first for the condition damage and the critical chance, just because if you can hit with the critical, you're going to be dealing out a little bit more damage, and your conditions will be doing tons of damage on top of that. So it's just another drop in the bucket, but every drop counts. And as for Soul Reaping, like again, it's condition critical damage and life force, which is the most important part of it. The life force, if you can increase your life force pool, you can go into Death Shroud for longer, so you can mitigate more damage that way. And if you use it smart, it'll allow you to stay in for longer. So that's all I've got for today. Make sure to like, favorite, subscribe, do whatever. Come back for more. I'll have more videos later this week. I just uploaded stuff, so I'll see you next time.